For years, sailors believed orcas were curious but harmless, majestic giants who passed without conflict. That illusion shattered the moment these apex predators began targeting boats with chilling precision. From smashed rudders to sunken yachts, these encounters are no longer rare freak events. They're happening more often and with terrifying force. But what's driving this aggressive wave? And are we only seeing the beginning? On May 4th, 2023, the Swiss sailing yacht Champagne was moving through the Strait of Gibraltar under engine power. 3 orcas suddenly approached. The largest slammed into the side of the hull, while 2 smaller ones repeatedly targeted the rudder and keel. The crew felt the yacht shudder with every collision, and within minutes, the steering quadrant was severely compromised. According to those on board, the smaller orcas appeared to watch the larger one and then copy its strikes. As panels cracked, water seeped through gaps near the rudder post. Fearing a total loss of steering, the skipper radioed for help. Spanish Coast Guard forces responded, arranging a tow to the nearest harbor in Barbate. During the tow, however, the yacht grew unstable. The battered rudder allowed more water to enter, and attempts to patch the holes proved inadequate. Despite the rescue team's best efforts, Champagne capsized near the harbor entrance, forcing the crew to scramble onto a rescue vessel. Though everyone survived, the dramatic scene left them shaken. Witnesses said the orcas showed a kind of coordinated effort, as if working together to disable the yacht. Specialists later suggested these animals might have been testing the boat or engaging in learned behavior that spread among certain groups of orcas. Whatever the reason, Champagne ended the day beneath the waves, and its stunned crew had a story few sailors could imagine. The incident served as a stark reminder that orcas, long admired for their intelligence, are also strong enough to devastate even a well-built sailing vessel in mere minutes. On November 1st, 2022, a sailboat found itself 22 kilometers off Portugal's coast when a pod of orcas closed in. At first, the skipper assumed they were just passing through, but the animals began circling the vessel at close range. Suddenly, repeated impacts against the hull caused violent jolts. The orcas rammed the boat for nearly 50 minutes, leaving the crew in growing alarm. The water soon began streaming into the lower compartments. Checking every seam and fitting, the sailors realized the pounding had broken parts of the hull, creating multiple leaks. Pumps helped, but the inflow continued. The crew activated their emergency beacon and made an urgent call for help. With the boat listing and water rising, they prepared an inflatable life raft, known in German as a Rettungsinsel. As the orcas continued bumping the hull, one large male surfaced close to the cockpit, spouting a loud breath. Crew members feared he might topple the boat completely. The battered sailboat shuddered again, prompting the skipper to order an evacuation. They gathered essential gear, radio, and personal flotation devices, then climbed into the raft. Rescue authorities arrived soon after, locating the drifting life raft. All aboard were retrieved safely, though the damaged sailboat was left behind. It eventually sank, claimed by rough waves made worse by the pounding hull. Experts who analyzed the event wondered why the animals pursued such a prolonged attack. Some researchers suggested it could be playful or learned group behavior. Others stated it might be orcas simply testing objects in their environment. Whatever the motive, the experience proved terrifying for those involved and highlighted the sheer power orcas can unleash on small craft. On July 31st, 2022, a sailboat carrying 5 people traveled about 11 kilometers off the Portuguese coast. The weather was calm, and the crew expected a trouble-free passage. Suddenly, a group of orcas appeared on the starboard side. Initially, the sight delighted everyone, but the mood shifted fast when the animals rammed the hull. Repeated collisions rocked the boat, snapping loose internal fittings and damaging the steering system. The hull groaned with each strike, and water poured in through fresh cracks. Fearing the worst, the skipper radioed a mayday. The MRCC, Maritime Rescue Coordination Center, in Lisbon mobilized resources, including the Portuguese Navy and port authorities at signs. They coordinated a swift rescue. Meanwhile, the crew on board scrambled to slow the flooding. Buckets, manual pumps, and rags helped momentarily, but the orcas continued to pound the structure. One large orca struck near the rudder post, causing a sudden shift in the boat's balance. It started listing badly to one side, prompting an urgent need to evacuate. Search vessels arrived just as the boat dipped lower. Rescuers pulled all 5 occupants to safety, and the sinking sailboat vanished into the waves soon after. Everyone survived, shaken but unhurt. Researchers who heard about the incident noted the pattern. Orcas had zeroed in on the boat's underbelly and steering gear, which matched previous reports in the region. While the reason behind such aggression remains debated, one fact stood out. Had rescue teams not arrived so quickly, the sinking could have turned deadly. The event reinforced the calls for better awareness among sailors navigating these waters, where orcas might appear without warning. In the early afternoon of November 7, 2023, Grazi Mamma II was making its way across the Strait of Gibraltar when a pod of orcas arrived. The crew saw sleek dorsal fins slicing through the water, approaching the yacht's stern. At first, no one panicked. Orcas had been spotted in this area before, but then the animals repeatedly struck the rudder, shaking the entire vessel. Over 45 minutes, the attacks continued. Helm controls grew unresponsive as the rudder twisted under the force of constant ramming. A leak soon opened, allowing water to surge in. Pumps couldn't keep pace with the influx. Crew members noticed that the orcas targeted the same spot on the underside as if they understood where to cause maximum damage. Fearing rapid flooding, the skipper radioed an SOS. Spanish Coast Guards quickly scrambled to the scene. As they arrived, Grazi Mamma II was already sitting lower in the water. The orcas seemed to ease off once the yacht began drifting without power. Within moments, the rescue vessel moved alongside, snatching the crew to safety. Despite those efforts, Grazi Mamma II was beyond saving. The hull, weakened by repeated blows, gave way. Within an hour of rescue, the yacht slipped under the waves. Marine experts reviewed the event, highlighting how these orcas had focused on the steering system. Some said it indicated playful or learned behavior that had turned destructive. Others believed stressors, such as low fish stocks or shipping noise, might be prompting new patterns. For the stranded sailors, however, the reason mattered less than survival. Though they escaped unharmed, the loss of the yacht was a sobering reminder that such encounters can escalate rapidly, with catastrophic outcomes. On May 12, 2024, the Spanish yacht Alberon Cognac sailed through the Strait of Gibraltar with just 2 people aboard. Clear skies and mild winds seemed ideal for a relaxed passage. All went smoothly until an orca surfaced near the stern, followed by another. The crew snapped photos, amazed at the close presence of these majestic creatures. Suddenly, a violent jolt rocked the boat. One orca rammed the hull, causing the helmsman to struggle for balance. Another blow struck the rudder with jarring force, leaving the wheel unresponsive. Alarms blared as water began pouring into the aft compartments. Each new impact widened cracks around the rudder post and compromised structural supports. Faced with serious flooding, the skipper made a frantic radio call. A nearby oil tanker responded, altering course to assist. In the minutes that followed, the orcas continued their assault, making it impossible to control the drifting yacht. The damaged hull kept taking on water, and the 2 sailors donned life jackets, preparing for the worst. When the tanker arrived, crew members helped pull the pair to safety. Alberon Cognac, however, had reached a point of no return. Deep cracks in the hull allowed the sea to flood every cavity. She sank soon after the sailors left her deck, swallowed by churning waves. Those who heard about the event were astonished by the swiftness of the sink. Marine observers pointed out how these orcas had targeted vital areas, almost as though they understood the boat's weak points. Whether driven by play, exploration, or other motives, the result was the same. A once proud yacht lost beneath the waves, adding yet another serious orca encounter to Gibraltar's growing list of vessel casualties. July 26, 2024, saw the British sailing yacht Bonami William crossing the Strait of Gibraltar with 3 crew members on board. The trip had been planned for weeks, as the sailors aimed to reach Morocco before the end of summer. Early that morning, they set sail under clear skies, not suspecting the dramatic episode ahead. Near midday, someone on deck spotted orcas off the port side. The crew slowed the engine, hoping for a peaceful viewing. Instead, the orcas circled in closer and then struck the rudder. The initial impact startled everyone, shaking loose gear below decks. A second slam followed, this time bending the steering shaft. Attempts to maneuver away failed when the yacht's wheel locked up. The orcas appeared to focus on the disabled rudder, hitting it repeatedly with their heads and flukes. Each collision sent a dull boom through the hull. Water seeped in through cracks, and the crew raced to pump it out while calling for help. Spanish Coast Guards answered, promising to reach them soon. Unfortunately, the damage spread. The stern took on more water, pulling the yacht lower. By the time rescuers arrived, the vessel was listing severely, making onboard evacuation too dangerous. The stranded sailors abandoned the ship into a smaller rescue craft. Within minutes, Bonami William disappeared beneath the surface, lost to the same waters she had hoped to traverse safely. Investigations afterwards stressed how this targeted assault on the steering system seemed consistent with other recent orca incidents in the strait. Researchers speculated that pods in the area had learned how to disable boats by crippling their rudders. While motivations remained unclear, these repeated sinkings showed that a single determined pod could quickly ruin a voyage or even threaten the lives of seasoned sailors. In June 2023, a Dutch sailor found himself alone on a small yacht in the North Sea near the Shetland Islands. The region's chilly waters are not commonly known for orca aggression, yet that day proved different. The sailor noticed a tall dorsal fin following his boat. At first, it looked like a single curious whale, but then it rammed the rudder with surprising strength. The forceful jolts echoed through the yacht, throwing items from shelves. Concerned about potential leaks, the sailor quickly checked for cracks. To his relief, the hull remained intact, though the steering mechanism felt less responsive. Another impact caused the rudder post to creak. Unsure how to handle the situation, he reduced his speed, hoping to appear less interesting to the orca. Within minutes, the orca circled for another pass. It bumped the stern again, but not as powerfully. The sailor carefully steered away, scanning the horizon for help. Fortunately, the orca seemed to lose interest after several attempts, finally swimming off. Though the yacht sustained damage, it stayed afloat, and the lone sailor did not require immediate rescue. Word of this incident spread quickly among local boating communities, raising fresh concerns that the pattern of orca-related collisions seen in Iberian waters might be leapfrogging into northern seas. While the extent of the damage was modest, the fact that an orca purposely struck the boat's rudder in the North Sea suggested that this unusual behavior could be expanding into new regions. Marine experts debated if these actions were learned from social pods or if they had separate origins. For the Dutch skipper, the lesson was clear. Even in areas not known for such encounters, orcas can still show alarming strength and unpredictability. In August 2024, the Belgian-owned yacht Amidala was sailing off northwestern Spain near Galicia, returning from a long voyage that started in Greece. The owners, a married couple, sometimes hosted extra crew members, seeking adventurous crossings. They had heard about orca encounters in the Strait of Gibraltar, but assumed they were well past that region's hotspots. One calm morning, the couple noticed a pod of orcas, about 11 in total. At first, the spectacle seemed breathtaking, but then the whales charged the rudder. Loud bangs shook the stern, and the boat lurched sideways. Worried about hull cracks, the skipper checked the bilge, already filling with water from a split near the rudder post. Attempts to slip away quietly by reducing engine noise made no difference. The whales persisted, delivering repeated blows. Each strike damaged critical steering parts, forcing the crew to send a distress call. Over an hour of pounding ensued, leaving the Amidala close to sinking. A rescue operation was launched by local authorities, who rushed a salvage team to the site. During the tense rescue, a tow line was attached to the yacht, but an unfortunate mishap injured a crew member's hand when the rope jerked unexpectedly. The injured sailor was evacuated by a separate boat for medical attention. Meanwhile, rescuers stabilized the Amidala enough to prevent immediate flooding. After the safe harbor was reached, inspection revealed extensive damage, including a crushed rudder assembly. News of 11 orcas banding together to strike a single vessel unsettled many. For marine observers, the size of this pod and their persistent approach raised questions about group communication and how these interactions evolve. For the Belgian owners, it was a frightening reminder that long journeys on open seas can turn dangerous when orcas decide to use their immense strength against a boat. The Guia III, an Italian racing yacht carrying 6 crew members, was sailing off the coast of Brazil on March 9, 1976. The voyage had been smooth, with a steady breeze pushing them toward their destination. Then, a pod of 4 or 5 orcas emerged unexpectedly. The crew was familiar with dolphins, but had never encountered orcas in those waters. To their shock, one large orca rammed the side of the yacht with tremendous force. The impact tore a deep opening in the hull. Ocean water surged through the gap, and the Guia III began sinking rapidly. The crew had no time to attempt repairs. Instead, they scrambled to deploy a life raft, grabbing supplies and emergency gear in haste. Though the orcas remained in the vicinity, they did not continue to attack. Surviving crew members later recalled a surreal stillness after the collision, as if the pod had achieved its aim with a single strike and then lost interest. The helpless yacht vanished below the surface minutes after the initial hit. In the aftermath, the 6 sailors drifted into the raft until they were rescued. None reported further aggression from the whales. Even so, the memory of that brief but devastating blow haunted them for years. Speculation arose. Was this ramming accidental, or did the orca intend to damage the boat? Decades later, experts still reference the Guia III when debating orca behavior toward vessels. Some see it as an isolated event, while others believe it foreshadowed a pattern that has become more common in recent decades. Whatever the cause, the outcome remains one of the earliest recorded cases of an orca sinking a modern racing yacht with a single powerful impact. On June 15, 1972, the 43-foot wooden schooner Lucette was sailing about 200 miles west of the Galapagos Islands. A family led by Dougal Robertson owned the vessel and had been voyaging across the Pacific for months. They planned to enjoy a relaxed life at sea and possibly write about their travels. That morning, however, multiple orcas appeared and began ramming the hull. The repeated impacts alarmed the family, who rushed to check for leaks. Each collision forced planks apart, creating gaps through which water poured. Realizing the schooner might not survive, the Robertsons scrambled to gather essential supplies. They launched an inflatable life raft and a small dinghy, aware that the Lucette could break apart at any moment. Despite attempts to ward off the orcas with loud noises, the whales persisted until the hull was so compromised that the schooner started to sink. Once the Robertson family evacuated, they drifted for weeks before being picked up by a passing ship. A dramatic survival story. Meanwhile, the Lucette descended into the depths, a victim of relentless orca pressure. This event stands out as one of the earlier documented orca boat collisions, involving severe damage and a total loss of the vessel. Even now, maritime historians point to the Lucette incident when discussing orca aggression or curious behavior toward wooden vessels. Although the whales did not harm the people directly, their actions forced an entire family into a desperate life raft journey. That test of survival became legendary, reminding sailors that these apex predators can overturn assumptions about safety on open seas, no matter how remote the location. If you enjoyed this video, watch our next one shown on screen.